we're going to talk today, Vitess at Demonware. Does anybody know Demonware? We're kind of a, hey, you, yeah. So Demonware is a company that does online services for pretty big games. Has anyone heard of Call of Duty? So yeah, we do online services for Call of Duty and a bunch of other games that you probably have never heard of. Skylanders, anybody? No Skylanders? Pitfall Mobile? What's another one? Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna do the first part of it, and then Ravi's gonna take over to the second part. So I'm Greg Smith. I'm principal architect at Demonware. And
Hi, I am Ravi. I'm the tech lead for DB Tech team at Demonware, and I've been with Demonware for 7 years, and Greg has been with for 11 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I oversee Vitess and Redis products at Demonware.
Yeah, and so yeah, I, as I said, principal architect. I've been around for 16 Call of Duties, 11 years. I started as a senior SRE and kind of just like weaseled my way into something a little more complex. Currently, I'm working on Legacy Evolution project, which is heavily Vitess based. So we grabbed slides from the KubeCon presentation, but most of my slides are actually from the KubeCon presentation. I'm going to give just a little mini version of that. So. We had, at one point, before we adopted Vitess, 4,500-ish virtual machines running MySQL that were managed by 1 or 2 or 3 people. It was pretty messy, and it was, when we were running bare metal, there was like 12 shards of something. It was like, okay, we can handle this. We roll out a config change. Not a big deal. One of the shards goes, or one of the replicas goes down. It's fine. We're okay. No problem. But it started to become pretty horrible when we actually moving to virtual infrastructure made it a little worse because of blast radius. So a hypervisor would go down, and now we would have 6 replicas go down for different titles, and it was we were like, this isn't manageable. We had a layer on top of our database sharding. We have an abstraction layer that did sharding for us, and then we had a management system that would go and kind of do what VTK does, but not really. It was VTK-esque. It did some failovers. It did routing to different replicas. It did all the stuff that you would think something would do 10 years ago. So yeah, we eventually started a MySQL evolution project because we're like, we can't handle this right now. This is getting out of control. There's a lot of people on call that are complaining. We had Ansible. It was actually very difficult to adopt Ansible at Demonware for some reason. We weren't allowed to use it for some reason, but we kind of secretly did. And then eventually it just became a normal. We had some Ansible stuff that would take care of replacing shards and do that. But there was in parallel there was a group that existed. It was some of the database engineers that were concerned and some other people. I'd actually left the company for a short time when this kind of booted up. So when I came back, I think actually maybe before I left, Vlad had just come back from this. Vlad right here, he was the other guy at KubeCon doing the thing. We got some cheers for you. So he was there, and he came back from Percona Live, I believe, and he was like, I heard about this wonderful thing. It's called Vitess. I'm like, tell me about it. And he's like, we will never use it. That's not me doing a Vlad impression. That's just me kind of, well, maybe a little bit. And I was like, why? And he's like, because we have to think about databases very differently, and we'll never think about them this way. He was like, he was pretty sure that we would never use Vitess, and I was like, don't worry, I probably agree with you. So as time went on, and we were kind of this group became a little more empowered, and we started doing some investigation into how we could take our core service that kind of was like a monolith and use back at Vitess. But we thought, okay, this might just be a drop-in thing. It has a MySQL compliant endpoint. We can do it. So we dropped it in and ran the system test, and I think 1% of them passed or something. So we were like, so Vlad painstakingly went and tried to figure out why all of them were failing. And I think 3 weeks later, he got it up to 15% or something. How close did you get? Did you actually?
It was around 50%.
Yeah, so he got about 50%, and then at that point he was crying, and we said, please stop. So we decided to kind of trash it for that idea, and around this time we started talking to, we actually started talking to Deepthi and Sugu. Yeah, and I think PlanetScale was really in its infancy, and we hopped on a call with them. There was my boss and another dude, and we asked them, like, we want to adopt this, but we're having some trouble. Like, what do you recommend? They said, don't migrate data into it. Just don't think about that. So we kind of took that advice, and I'm not really adhering to the slides. I hope that's okay. I'm just telling a story. We decided to take our biggest, at the time actually, probably our biggest, meanest cluster, and before that we did a very small proof of concept, which was not, it was a success, but it kind of was like it was successful enough. We're gonna look at a much bigger service now. So we decided to take our biggest, meanest service and back it by Vitess, and we had this opportunity because we were able to clear the data from it. It was the inventory service for Call of Duty, the thing that stores what gun you have, or what camo you have, or an operator or something. And we built it up and we started load testing. Anybody familiar with load testing here? It's pretty fun with Vitess. It's an interesting thing. So we started load testing, and it everything looked good. Like, it was like right when we started load testing, we were just like, this is pretty good. But then we started hitting bottlenecks, and so we scale up and we scale up and we scale up, and we ended up like settling on 128 shards. This was partially because of login spikes. So we tested the heck out of this, and we scaled it up, we scaled it down. We actually did. People were very interested in how we could do shard expansions and reductions. So we were load testing, we were doing shard expansions, reductions. I was kind of against it. I was like, let's just leave it and like test it, and then we can do that after. But we ended up doing it out of necessity. So it worked very well, but it was months and months and months of testing. It was at times very stressful, but at other times like, hey, this is great. We ended up launching our product with it, and at the time, so we did a beta, and the beta was the first time that we kind of had it running there, and my heart rate like went from like up here to down here as soon as I saw it running in production. I was like, okay, we're good. So where we were at KubeCon 2023, we had 2 services running in production. Our team service, that we kind of told you if you have a team, you can name it whatever, and tell you who's on your team and that. And that was the small service we did. And then we had our inventory service. So at this point, it started attracting quite a bit of attention, and we were like, "Ooh, this is good." We were just starting to bootstrap our database tech team, which Ravi is on, and Maeve is heading up. And it was a necessary thing, I think, because at the time we had a tooling team and we had some MySQL experts and that, but it was kind of like Vlad and I were like, we can't be the guys doing this. Like, that's not us. We help. So yeah, we had those 2. And I don't know if anybody who saw the KubeCon presentation, there was a point when somebody asked, have you done data migrations? And Vlad and I were kind of like nervous that somebody was going to ask this. And I saw Vlad kind of like, freeze up, and I just kind of pushed back. I'm like, no, we have not done that. Next question. So we've now actually done that. We did it with a. That's his. That's his. I'm not gonna go on with it. So we did it, and Ravi's gonna talk about it, but we did it. And we're actually starting to see the operational, the benefits. So we were, the people complaining, hey, we we're suffering from on-call, and that we were seeing the benefits from all that. So it was, thank you, Vitess. Thank you, Vitess maintainers. It's making our life much better. So all of that's the KubeCon thing. So I'll give a kind of a rundown of what I'm doing now. So I'm working on a project called DW Classic, which is taking 15 years of previous titles, which if anybody has worked in the game industry before, when titles were shipped, you would ship them and you would let them sit. And you don't update them, you don't anything. So you would ship it, and then it would sit there, and it would, do its thing, but you wouldn't really touch the tech stack. You wouldn't do anything. You just be like, okay, it's going to be there. Eventually, it might, be sunset or something. So what's the point of, iterating on this? There's no point in it. So, but we discovered after 15 years that becomes quite tedious and not great. So I proposed, actually it's been being proposed for quite a long time. We want to modernize things, we want to do this. And I had an opportunity to do it kind of after the Vitess adoption, and that I pitched it to leadership, and they were like, fine. So I kind of began by taking one of our titles, and much like the Etsy story, it was just, there was all of the same characteristics of it. We had our own sharding layer. We had just a lot of legacy code, incompatible queries. We're doing a lot of weird stuff, and we had to take it, rip it apart, and it was not difficult per se, but it was quite time consuming. We had to. Somebody went through and changed all of the. We weren't going to make any code changes at first. We were thinking of like running proxy SQL and just like mutating any of the queries that weren't Vitess compatible and having it work like that. But we ended up doing code changes. It was fine. And yeah, right now we have our whole one of our games whole stack running in Kubernetes. So it worked, but it is going to be a huge undertaking, many years of work. So yeah, that I think wraps it up for me. This random, sorry if that was too scattered, but hopefully you got something from it. And I'll pass it off to Ravi.
Thank you, Greg. So as Greg mentioned, right, DBTech team, and I'm the tech lead of DBTech team, was formed right when Vitess was introduced into Demonware. Every other team that creates services for games wanted it, because they felt the burden of running the old databases outside, right? So we soon realized that we can't just let everyone run their own Vitess environment and figure it out on their own. So we had to somewhat centralize the expertise. So we had an old team that created tooling for the old databases. So we repurposed that, we expanded the team into something called DBTech. And essentially we provided the Vitess environment, the whole setup, along with some add-ons, and Redis as well, because that was a hot cake in various services. So let's talk about what the purpose of the team is. So our offerings, mainly all the Vitess environments, were packaged in terms of Helm charts. So what it actually meant was every other team, we have our own Kubernetes clusters in Demonware. So every team that wants to spin up a database would then use the Helm charts provided by DBTech team, and then would install their own Vitess environment. This Helm charts would also include other components that were made by other Demonware teams, such as alerting, monitoring, having Prometheus spin up automatically when you deploy a Vitess cluster, so that you can have all the metric scraping rules predefined and configured, right? And then all the alerts defined are injected into the Prometheus alert manager, so that you can have alerts on, replication lag, or when your replica's backup is not usable anymore, and so on. So all of this packaged together would be the product. And this, coupled with documentation on how to install, how to troubleshoot stuff, to support, like in case they can't, they have an incident and they need help. Tooling and consultation, right? So if someone wants to understand how to shard better, how to create their schema, and so on, we would get involved. So that was primarily our function, and then we also had the lifecycle part of it to take care. So we started going through the Vitess upgrades, and those were complex enough that we would just go and do it for teams, so that we don't, teams need not figure out on their own. So and I think recently we just did like about over 100 Vitess cluster upgrades from going from V14 to V16. And hopefully the idea is that we keep upgrades, make it a common thing so that we are not too far behind the upstream releases. So what do we do, right? And this slide is probably a duplicate in the sense I might have covered most of it. But yeah, we provide tooling, we do consultation for our in-house teams. And then we also sometimes embed engineering, like the project that Greg was mentioning about DW Classic. So we have a team member who's working dedicated to that project to get all the old tech migrated over to Vitess. So we do that, and also we work with PlanetScale and the community to evolve our products. So I'm essentially lurking in all the open source Slack and trying to ask questions and stuff. So that's mainly what we do. And let me go through my presenter notes here. Sorry. Can't scroll. So I'll talk about the live migration part. I think that is the most interesting thing. And this is the other service. It's as big as, or maybe slightly smaller than the main service that Greg mentioned about with 128 shards. So this service had existing data. So it is something that we could not just start fresh. So we had to bring the data over. Outside Vitess, it had about 120 shards itself. And we needed a way to get it migrated over to Vitess without any downtime, right? So that was the main ask that we do. We have a way to path to live migrate data requiring zero downtime. And what was this? We eventually were able to do it. We had to go through months and months of testing, iterating on the process, working with the community. And I'll briefly describe the various challenges we had. So the biggest challenge was the existing data layer, right? Like the existing sharding layer. The sharding topology or algorithm used in Demonware is very different than what Vitess shards on. So Vitess did not have any notion or didn't recognize that sharding algorithm. So what we had to do is we had to figure out a way to Vitess to create a custom module in Vitess that can recognize that sharding algorithm, so that we can plug in the old or the existing shards into Vitess and get the workflow initiated. So this actually has a bit of a challenge because we are going from a completely different 120 odd shards into a Vitess key space with 128 shards. That was the target at that time. And this involved, when we first worked on the custom code to get that integrated, Vitess was able to recognize the existing sharding layer. So we were able to attach all the existing MySQL primaries into Vitess as external key space. And then you could actually see all the data, query it, and all that. So then the next logical step would be to use the move tables workflow to get all the data in. Unfortunately, what happened is as soon as we initiated any move tables workflow, the amount of data that was being copied over all at the same time, and because the sharding topology is different, you had m into n times data replicated over. So you were essentially bringing that many copies of the data over to Vitess and trying to then pick what parts fits into each shard. So this meant there was a huge amount of I/O, huge amount of network throughput. We saturated every part of the stack in our data center. Luckily, this was all load test, and it was isolated enough that it didn't do any major impact. So we soon had to figure out a way to actually bring the data over shard by shard. So there was a lot of you initiate the move tables workflow, but not start it, and then you pick each stream and start it individually, and so on. So we had to do a lot of such things. And the other challenge is anytime things didn't go as planned, you couldn't really undo it quickly. You had to completely tear down the entire workflow, reseed the data, clear out all the Vitess clusters, rebuild it, and start fresh. So each testing iteration took days. So it was such a big, and we had to eventually automate that workflow as well so that we can, press a button and go walk away, maybe go end your day quickly and then come in early in the morning to hopefully the script is not bad enough that it hangs somewhere, right? It completes it and so on. So we were able to iterate like that and make it more manageable. So that was the sharding issue. The other one is problems of scale, right? Because this is huge amount of data and huge number of shards. And every step of the migration, we ran into things timed out, things needed some tweaking. So there was a lot of such tweaking and tuning that required. And with my previous mention about how it takes time to iterate, which means that the whole process took months, up to a year, I suppose. And the problems of scale also was interesting in the sense that in load testing, when we eventually got everything moved over, we then ran VDiff to ensure that data was properly copied over. And that crashed the entire thing because VDiff essentially does similar thing to move tables, as in it brings all the data over to diff. So then we had to work with the community to get the VDiff part also broken down into phases so that you can only diff one shard at a time. And eventually in prod, when we did this, we were it was early in the morning, right when the load was not too high, and we didn't want to sit and wait for the VDiff to complete, so we planned for it to just randomly do first 10,000 rows or something like that so that it's good enough on every shard. And we have done it so many times in load testing that we were confident that prod was uneventful, and it was. So that was our journey with live migration. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
What kind of queries did you have the most trouble migrating?
I don't think anything was overly troublesome. It was more just identifying them because we had a lot of different queries. So our abstraction layer had some patterns in it, and nothing was too complex. We haven't found anything that complex yet, though. So I would say we've been lucky.
Yeah, I think to add one thing, because we load test the services with or without Vitess quite well, and inefficient queries or complex queries were tackled earlier in the stages when you can't reach the set query per second or transaction rate. So I think we were sort of lucky in that sense, I guess.
Okay, Lisa.
Yeah. What other solutions were you scoping out at the time, and why did this one end up winning overall?
Interesting. So, yeah, we were looking at TiDB as well, and we actually they were running neck and neck. And what ended up happening was because we had MySQL experts on staff and we had seen all of this, it was a much more businessy choice to take Vitess. Yes.
So I can add to that the idea. I think that the main reason why we decided against was that sharding is always you can't have control over your sharding across different tables.
Okay.
Which was absolutely requirement for us that single player data has to stay in the same shard to be able to run transactions. TIDD, I'm not sure now, didn't allow it at that time when we were evaluating.
Did everybody know that? Just sharding, so the sharding constraints for TiDB just weren't the same as Vitess, and Vitess gave us a lot more flexibility. Okay. I think you.
Yeah. So when you were migrating one shard at a time, did you have downtime when you couldn't?
No.
How did you manage that?
So we were migrating one shard at a time, but the application was still talking to the old set, right? So the way the workflow works is it is how it works even for like it's publicly available, I guess, in the sense that what I think what Vitess supports is moving data from one database to Vitess, right? And what we were trying to do is multiple shards. But to answer your question, I think the initial step is to get all the data in and all the replication workflows started, and then you use you point your application to Vitess, but the VT gate still redirects queries to your older databases, right? And then you issue a switch traffic command, which would temporarily lock the whole thing and then switch it over. During the process, you might see some errors, but retries and all that should be okay. But that flip of a switch is what lets you do all at once, I guess.
Yeah, we use standard method that's documented, so it works.
We were mainly running into timeouts, right? Like things that the code expects to be done, and either it's configurable defaults that had to be raised. Sometimes they were hard-coded timeouts that we need to go and raise it or expose it via config or something like that. So I don't remember what exactly because there were too many, but it was a whack-a-mole game, right? Like you do once and then you find the next one. We were actually very frequently asked for, okay, where are we at? How long it's going to take? And we didn't have an answer because every next problem, we don't know how far we have come across, right? But at one, so when it actually finally worked, we were kind of surprised.
I think we tuned VT game VT tablet quite a bit as well. In the early bits of it, but we had a lot of help from PlanetScale community to do that. So
yeah, and we also found like weird artifacts, probably by design in hindsight, is that because all these the VT tablets run in our Kubernetes environments, and they are all kind of like you have other workloads too.
And anybody else? Go. What? Oh.
My question is not related to migration, but your experience related to support, staffing and the support and the issues that have before and after. You can compare.
Before Vitess and after Vitess. So there was a lot more Vitess support after we adopted Vitess. I mean, yeah, I think that the problems are fairly similar in some ways, but with Vitess, I feel I'll let Ravi answer this because he's the.
So I think the biggest benefit of using Vitess, and we use it in Kubernetes, and we get that auto remediation for free, right? I think that is the biggest thing, because so far with our older tech, every time we get a hardware goes down, someone gets paged.
We use vTorque for that as well.
No, I said outside Vitess.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant sorry.
Yeah, so I think that is the biggest benefit. But obviously, with like now we are running the support that comes is in how do we do X with Vitess? How do we, drop a column in a table and make it work? And then we have to iterate there. So it's more of more experience, for the teams that run databases.
Okay, should we cut it there? Any more questions? Okay, that's it.
Thank you.